Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Chad Weston. I am co-founder of Traction House, which is a digital marketing agency. My partner Simon and I have a boutique shop that's focused exclusively on the asset management space. And today we are going to be focusing on ETF marketing in particular. The ETF distribution landscape is undergoing somewhat of a paradigm shift. Fee compression and increasingly arduous advertising regulatory landscapes are making things expensive and traditional methods of distribution less and less attractive. Add to the fact that the ETF marketplace is more competitive than it's ever been. In 2003, there were 123 ETFs issued in the United States competing for investor mindshare. Today, that number is over 2,000. The rapid growth of ETF products over this time span has far outpaced the growth of the US investing population. So the net effect is an investor mindshare that's under increasing pressure for attention from ETF products. So becoming known, liked, and trusted is no small task in today's insanely competitive attention economy. Thankfully, marketing leaders like Alexandra Levis and her team at Arro Financial Communications are dedicating their professional lives to helping ETF issuers compete in this harsh environment. Alexandra is the CEO and founder of Arro Communications. She's responsible for new business development, client services, and agency growth. And prior to establishing the agency, she developed and ran marketing and public relations campaigns at Global X Funds, a New York City-based ETF issuer, where she served as vice president of marketing. She began developing solid relationships with the financial press while at Dukas Public Relations, where she managed various media campaigns for asset management clients. Levis graduated with a BA in International Relations from Tufts University and is fluent in English, French, and Spanish. She has spoken at Financial Times and ETF Trends panels on the role of philanthropy in financial services marketing, as well as on ETF marketing trends. She's an avid traveler, and she's visited over 40 countries. Alexandra, welcome to the show.
Hi, Chad. Thanks so much for having me.
So I think before we get started, I know I just provided our audience with a little bit of a background on your expertise and kind of the pedigree that you come from in the space, but maybe just talk a little bit about some of the motivations moving away from working at an ETF issuer to actually starting up your own marketing communications business.
Yeah, so I've always been in the financial communication space, as you kindly mentioned in my bio. I started out doing PR for asset management companies, which encompass mutual funds, ETFs, hedge funds, private equity firms. And then I got more onto the marketing side of things while I was at Global X. And I realized that, at the end of the day, an ETF company, not all asset management companies, but particularly ETF companies, their success really hinges on sales, distribution, and marketing. So I definitely saw a huge opportunity to launch an agency that combined my background in financial communications, financial marketing, creating collateral, with this huge uptick in ETFs. And I was very lucky. It was kind of a right place, right time sort of situation. And it was also a way to bring in public relations and marketing collateral and advertising all under one roof for the ETF space. So while I was at Global X, I had to deal with a lot of vendors to get a lot of things done. And I thought, why isn't there an agency that does everything under the one roof? So that was the impetus behind launching the agency.
That's wonderful. Basically, what I'd like to do is I want to start out by talking about the current state of affairs in the ETF marketing space. Help our audience understand why we're talking about some of the subjects along ETF marketing and competing in today's attention economy and stuff like that. So how would you articulate the challenges facing a new ETF issuer from a marketing and distribution standpoint?
So there's a couple of things that all new ETF issuers should really be aware of. There are several challenges that they will have to overcome. The first one being it's an extremely crowded marketplace. So, you have over 2,000 ETFs in the U.S. that are competing for investor mind share, not to mention all the ETFs that have been cross-listed internationally. And to really think about the amount of time and money that you're going to have to put into a very robust sales and marketing plan. It's a crowded marketplace, so you're going to be competing against boutique issuers that might be the same size as you, but you're also competing against these financial behemoths with massive advertising spend and massive brand name recognition. So you really have to think about how to position yourself if you want to be, if you don't want to be a small fish in a big pond, so you have to really think about how you're going to position yourself in a crowded marketplace. So I would say that's definitely the first challenge that every new ETF issuer should be aware of. The second one is going back to, competing against the larger guys is, there's like 5 large issuers out there that make up about 90% of all inflows. And again, it's thinking about if you're a boutique ETF issuer and you're coming to market, what are the competitive advantages that you're going to have vis-a-vis some of these larger incumbent players? And then the last thing is the fee war or fee compression. So it's making it much more difficult for the smaller boutique issuers to compete when you have guys like Vanguard or Goldman Sachs that are coming out with products that, they're practically free. So Vanguard has some products out there that are 4, 5, 6 basis points. Goldman Sachs has come out with products that are about 9 basis points. And most boutique issuers just don't have the means to compete on that level. So they're coming out with products between, let's say, lately we've seen products between 30 and 50 basis points, which historically weren't considered that expensive. But if you're a small boutique issuer, you obviously don't have the economies of scale to offer your products at a much lower rate. So that's just something that we want to make sure, every time we talk to ETF issuers, we just want to make sure that they understand the challenges that they're facing. And it's not to say that they have to, offer their products at 5 basis points, but just have some contextual understanding of, from a brand recognition, who they're competing against, and from a price standpoint, who they're going to be competing against. So I think those are the 3 main things that new issuers should be thinking about as they enter the space and, think about how they're going to overcome some of these challenges.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I appreciate that. And so basically what it sounds like is there's very limited budget that could go into competing with some of these big guys at scale. And so I think the term maximizing exposure dollars is something that Simon and I use frequently when speaking with prospects. And it's just a way to really articulate making every dollar that you put into exposure going as far and wide and making that as an effective spend as possible. And a lot of that comes down to how you build what we call brand equity. So Simon and I obviously talk about brand equity by becoming known, liked, and trusted at scale online. If you can achieve that status, if you can become known, so you're an ETF product that people know about, people like you, and they trust the makeup of the product, or they trust the management, or all the different investment criteria that goes into making a buy decision. A lot of that, I think, I would say boils down to brand equity. But you, Alexandra, have a little bit of a different way of describing brand equity. But why don't you describe what it is, and then maybe talk about why it's so important to build brand equity online today?
Yeah, sure. So brand equity really comes down to, the importance of being known, liked, and trusted. And in Marketing 101, the KLT acronym. So it's, how people, are people aware that you even exist? And we say that to new issuers all the time, which is, it's not enough just to come out with this amazing product, but if people don't know that you exist, there's absolutely no way they're going to go looking for you. So the first thing I'd like to address there is the K in known of brand awareness. And what we recommend to clients in this case is, if you have the ability to do any sort of brand awareness ad campaign, whether it's a specific product awareness or whether it's brand awareness, depending on your budget, depending on kind of what your goals are, that's something that we want to make sure that clients understand that, again, people can't invest in your product if it doesn't exist. So brand awareness can come in a variety of forms, but what we've really seen success with brand awareness would be through, let's say, a digital ad campaign or a TV campaign if the client's budget allows, as well as a PR campaign. Now, the second one, being liked, that's a really interesting one because people gravitate towards investment products for a variety of reasons. Maybe they find it maybe it's interesting. Maybe they like the expected income. Maybe they're particularly bullish on a specific sector. So in terms of, as an ETF issuer, how do you get investors to quote unquote like you? You want to make sure that your value proposition, your investment philosophy, it's clear, it's approachable, it's understandable. Oftentimes you have issuers come out with really complicated leveraged products that nobody's going to understand. And if they don't understand it, that there's no way that they're going to like it. Not to mention that people probably shouldn't be investing in things that they don't understand. So from a like standpoint, we want to make sure that we are conveying in the most clear and articulated way possible. We want to be able to convey our client's message and convey, their investment philosophy and why they're coming out with a specific product. And the last one, the T, the trust, we really believe that content generation, thought leadership, staking a claim in a particular industry, that's how the smaller guys are going to be able to compete against the larger guys. So the larger guys, the large asset management firms out there that have tons and tons of ETFs, they specialize in launching a lot of different kinds of products, but maybe they don't specialize in a specific subset. But if you're a new boutique ETF issuer, and let's say, for instance, you're very bullish in artificial intelligence, you are an artificial intelligence research shop, and you want to come out with an artificial intelligence ETF, that is a fantastic opportunity for you to become a thought leader in the artificial intelligence space. So, and that's how you get people to trust your product. So you want to be coming out with value-add content, educational content. You want to make people understand, or prospective investors understand, the why behind investing in your product, and you want them to be able to trust the fund managers behind the product to make the right investment decisions that'll give you the best exposure to that particular sector.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and in terms of the thought leadership piece, one thing that resonated with me is that the key thing to think about here is it needs to be evident that you're invested in delivering value to your audience and to your prospective investors without really asking much in return. You're not in a sell mode at this point. You're really just about becoming someone that's known and thought of and leaned on. It needs to be evident through the content distribution and through your marketing efforts that you really are in it to educate and bring value up front without necessarily asking for anything in that particular instance. On your website, there's a statement that really I picked up on that I really liked, and I'm going to read it for the audience here, and then I'm going to ask you a question about it. So, in a sea of new issues, it's become more critical than ever before for an ETF to stand out from the field. We help accomplish this by becoming intimately familiar with an issuer's core identity, as well as the salient details regarding the fund in question. Doing this ensures that the client's message is faithfully conveyed to investors and the public at large, enabling new issues to rise above the clutter. So, when thinking about that statement, what are some of the common salient details that an ETF's got to focus on, Alexandra, in communicating in order to build rapport with investors online and generate that brand equity?
Yeah, so every time, and it's a great question, so every time we embark on a new campaign with a client, whether it's a PR campaign or whether it's a campaign to create content collateral, blogs, white papers, you name it, we really want to make sure that the first step is we understand the message behind the product. Or in some cases, we're tasked with coming up with the message behind the product if it's a completely new product. And in thinking about the messaging of the product, there's really two things that we want to think about. First and foremost, who is the firm? Who are the players behind the firm? Where do they come from? Why are they coming out with this product now? Why are they coming out with this product at all? Why is the fee the way the fee is? We want to think about and we want to anticipate the questions that the financial press is going to ask, as well as prospective investors are going to ask about the firm and about the product. And additional to that, the second thing that we look at is once this product gets launched, how does it fit in the competitive landscape? Is it first to market? Is it a Me Too product? And a Me Too product in our industry is, a competing similar product. So what exactly, if it is a competing product, if there's already an artificial intelligence ETF out there and you're a new issuer and you're also coming out with an artificial intelligence ETF, we need to look under the hood and we need to really understand what's the index composition, how is the fund constructed, what are the tax advantages of the fund, what are the different benefits and characteristics that we can point to. So when an investor is evaluating between one ETF and another, what are some of the competitive advantages that we can point to? I don't think it's enough to just say, we're very bullish on this particular sector and, we think everyone's going to be invested in artificial intelligence. It's really looking at the nuances of the products and thinking about them from like I said, from an index construction or a product construction and a product development standpoint, and making sure that if you're looking under the hood and a product is supposed to be delivering China exposure, you want to make sure those holdings deliver China exposure. And if they're not, you want to make sure you have a message as to why that might be the case. So those are some of the things that we think about when we're undergoing a messaging session with a client.
That's awesome. So that's actually coming up with the narrative. That's the expression of the story. That's articulating that core identity and regarding the fund in question and making sure that it's really niche and specific to the fund so that it speaks to relevant audiences and gets picked up. So now that you've got the message in place, you've done that narrative work and you've got the overall storyline ready to go, what are some of the different collateral pieces that you package together in order to communicate that message digitally versus on the phone or some of these traditional methods? Like, how do you actually express that narrative online?
So the first step in expressing the narrative is I mentioned this messaging session that we do with clients, and that exercise, I should say, it's literally a brainstorming session, and at the end of the day, the deliverable there is basically a Word document where it's the kind of the who, what, where, when, why of the fund. That's an internal facing document, but it's not going to see the light of day, but it's going to be used as a springboard for collateral. So in talking about the collateral, there's obviously a lot of different initiatives out there, but we think about collateral in two buckets. We think about collateral in terms of what do you need for launch, and we think about collateral in terms of what can you create over time after your fund has launched to sustain the momentum and to sustain the engagement. So when we're thinking about collateral for launch, there's a few pieces that we always advise our clients to have from a best practices standpoint. The first one is a website. And the reason it's number one is because it's actually a regulatory requirement. You need a website to launch. At the very least, you need to make sure that all your fund information and the disclosures are on there. But we also want to take the opportunity to have the website be a calling card, to have the website be a repository of great content and information that draws more investors in. So number one is your ETF website, which will have the data feed. The next piece of collateral that we think about, or the next few pieces of collateral that we think about for launch, you're going to want to make sure you have a fact sheet. It's something that investors, it's an expected item that investors will be asking for, and even though clients probably won't get performance until about 1 month after their fund launches, you want to make sure that you have, properly updated fact sheets on your website, because it is something that people are going to be going toward and expecting to find. The other couple of pieces that we would recommend for launch would be an investment case. And an investment case is basically an accompanying piece of material to the fact sheet. The fact sheet's going to have all the performance, all the data, and the investment case is going to be the story, the why behind the product. And we find that it's a very overlooked piece of material, but it's so important because it really helps articulate and make sure that everyone from the marketing person to the salesperson is on the same page in terms of, the story behind the product and why they've come out with that product. And then the other pieces of material that we would say would be useful to have maybe a couple of months after launch, and what we've been seeing a lot of demand for. We see a lot of demand for animated infographic videos. Videos are a great way to engage a prospective investor and to give them a quick snapshot of what your product does, how it works, why they should be invested in it. So we're really bullish on animated infographic videos. 2D infographics are also a great way. Not everybody wants to read a really detailed technical explanation for something. Some people are visual learners. So infographics are a great way to break down a very complex idea, particularly in financial services, where you can actually see, for instance, if the infographic is about a particular index and the index filters for certain categories, an infographic is a great way to illustrate what that looks like. So infographics are something we definitely see a lot of. Email blast campaigns are something else that are fantastic. Some clients do an email blast campaign right when they launch. Some clients do them a little bit after, but it's a great way to stay top of mind with clients down the road. And then we can also talk about, other things that we do for clients a little bit after launch. A lot of blogging, again, from an SEO standpoint, it's a great way to stay engaged with your prospective clients or current clients, that look to you as a thought leader in a particular industry. And then white papers and just content pieces in general. And, the mediums can be different. But you can create a piece of content and then slice and dice it in different ways. So you can create a piece of content, such as a white paper, but then you can take that white paper and split it up into 5 different pitches and use those pitches to go out to the press. You can take that white paper, slice it in a couple of different ways, and turn it into a cool video or into an email blast campaign. So it's important to think about collateral that you need for launch versus further down the road. And it's equally important to think about collateral that's multi-purpose and that can be optimized for different things, because everybody consumes information in a different way. So you want to make sure that you're hitting the visual learners, the people who like to be engaged and entertained, and the people who do want that more academic, more traditional white paper.
That's actually a really good point, your last one there. I mean, it's easy today to think about how our attention spans are less and less and we're more intolerant to really investing in consumption and stuff like that. But there still are a lot of people that do want to do their due diligence and they want to read up on more in-depth white papers and stuff like that. So I think, like you touched on, having a a broad array of content that touches at different levels of depth, whether it's a 2-minute explainer video or an hour-long webinar or a research report that literally takes 2 to 3 hours to get through to fully understand. I think having that full inventory of content is huge, and we're seeing that in our end as well.
Yeah.
So if we think about, once you've got that content, one of the biggest complaints or one of the biggest themes that we see in producing all this stuff is compliance. How would you recommend ETF issuers, when they're investing in marketing materials, think about compliance, or do they just pay for somebody else to check off those boxes, or how do you guys think about that stuff?
Yeah, so we really think about compliance as a step, as a necessary step in our process, and I think that's one of the differentiators we have, compared to other kind of marketing agencies that don't specialize in financial services, is that we understand kind of the necessary evil that compliance is. It's meant to protect the client. It's meant to, ensure that the client isn't putting something out there that they're not supposed to be, or that they're breaking any sort of regulatory rules. So the easiest way, I think, for issuers to deal with compliance and to think about compliance in their process is in the same way that an issuer would have to review, an email blast or web copy or an ad campaign or anything like that. The next step has to be that compliance needs to take a look at it. And the earlier we can get compliance to take a look at something, the easier of a time we're going to have. Here's a perfect example. If you're going to engage with an agency to create a video, you're an ETF issuer and you want to create a 2-minute explainer video, you want to make sure that every phase of that project is compliance reviewed and approved. And why is that? Because the last thing you want to do is you want to spend all this time and all this money creating a video, getting it animated, and then you submit it to compliance and you have to make all these post-production edits because half of the video, is too promissory, let's say. So I think the best way for issuers to think about compliance is know when in the process they need to be alerted to, a new piece of material, and just to keep them up to date as to the progress of that particular piece of collateral, so that when the piece of collateral is finalized, there hopefully shouldn't be any issues. So in a video, for instance, you want to make sure the script is approved by compliance. You want to make sure the storyboard is approved by compliance. I mean, a lot of people don't think about this, but outside of text, from a design standpoint, there's a lot of things that you can't do. You can't show piggy banks. You can't show coins. You can't show dollar signs. So you definitely want to make sure that compliance is taking a look at your graphics and your design so that you're not conveying something you're not supposed to be conveying. And then finally, we want compliance to take a look at the final piece of the video before we share it with the world, just to make sure that there are absolutely no issues and that we've gone through, we've crossed our T's, we've dotted our I's, and it's something that we can put out to the public. And another thing to keep in mind is if you're an ETF issuer and you're working on, a television commercial or a really expensive website or anything that requires a big upfront cost or a lot of capital, you probably want to have a conversation with your compliance team about pre-filing something with FINRA, because your compliance team will file things with FINRA sometimes after it's already out there. So for instance, you'll do a fact sheet, you'll post it to your website, and then compliance will post-file it with FINRA. And 3 months later, you might get a FINRA notice, and you have to change that fact sheet, even if it's outdated. That's one thing. To change a fact sheet, it's very quick. But if you spend all this time and money on a website, or you spend all this time and money on a TV commercial, the last thing you want to do is change it. So it's super important that every step of the way compliance is involved. And if you have to pre-file something with FINRA and get their blessing on it, you want to do that sooner rather than later.
Yeah, no kidding. So it sounds like compliance needs to be in the loop almost from the get-go. So you're not wasting time and budget dollars on creating or making creative that's just going to get shot down.
Exactly. No, absolutely. And, the best thing that you can do for your firm is have a great relationship with your compliance officer, be very open and transparent about when you need things by, because oftentimes things get held up in compliance. So I think open lines of communication with your compliance officer are good. When I was at Global X, I used to speak to the compliance officer on a daily basis. We had a great rapport. He understood the cadence of our workflow, and he was able to review things quickly. So I really urge people, whoever is dealing with compliance, have a good relationship with them, find out the most expedient way to get things done, and make sure they're part of your process from the beginning.
Well, we've made a lot of progress so far. So we've talked about the lay of the land in terms of the ETF landscape and the challenges that new issuers face in terms of building up brand equity. We've talked about the importance of brand equity, what it is in terms of building and getting to a known, liked, and trusted status. We've talked about developing the narrative that's core to your identity as a product issuer. We've talked about the different collateral or pieces of content that can go out digitally to express that narrative at different depths depending on the learner's preferences. And then we've also talked about how to navigate and make sure that compliance is there every step of the way. One of the big questions that we get a lot, and I'd really like to get your opinion on this, Alexandra, is marketing ROI. So just to set this up, material success of an ETF product, as we know, is capital inflows on an open exchange. And most of the time, traditionally, that's an anonymous or a relatively anonymous thing. And so it's difficult to, unlike a shopping cart on an e-commerce website where the purchase or the dollars back from your marketing spend happens on your own property and you can track it, on an ETF, that framework or that infrastructure isn't the case. The dollars that you get back from your marketing spend are manifested on an exchange. And so how do you guys typically handle or demonstrate the success from a dollars and cents standpoint, Alexandra, of a marketing spend for an ETF issuer?
Yeah, Chad, this is a great question. We get this question a lot, and as you've illustrated perfectly, the ETFs, unlike a pair of jeans or a bottle of perfume, there is no shopping cart on the website. There is no way to track, from a kind of point by point sales. Everything is on an open exchange. So for the most part, it's very, very difficult. Trust me, I've tried. It's very, very difficult to say if you do X, Y, Z, then ABC is going to happen from a sales standpoint because there's no very easy way to track it. So what we do in these conversations is we talk about the fact that when we talk to clients, we have to shift their expectations of measurement a little bit because we can't measure the product in the way you would with a typical retail product. So when we talk about measuring success, look, at the end of the day, success is going to be measured by AUM no matter how you slice it. That's the goal. It's to grow AUM. But I think that there's a lot of benchmarks that we can take a look at on the way to AUM that can kind of indicate how a product is doing. And so in those cases, we want to look at it from a couple of different standpoints. When you think about incorporating a public relations campaign for a product launch, if you're able to get a client to go on television or to get quoted by a marquee financial publication, what you're hoping to get out of that is a spike in trading volume. People are talking about the product, people are trading the product, and if it may not necessarily lead to massive amounts of AUM, but seeing the trading and seeing the engagement is a great measure of success, especially out of the gate. Another thing that we've been seeing as kind of a, from a metric standpoint are, all the digital tracking, and you guys know this way better, is all the digital tracking and metrics that you can get from a social media campaign or an ad campaign or an email blast campaign. So again, in lieu of having, an ability to track every piece of sale or every point of sale, what you do have is you have a sense of, if you're doing a robust campaign, you do have a sense of engagement. Are people downloading your fact sheet? How many people are going to your website? Where in the world are they based? Are people, forwarding your email blast on? If you have a video and it sits on a YouTube channel, how many clicks is it getting? Are people engaging with it? And so from that standpoint, you can measure engagement and you can measure interest. And down the road and sustained and over time, that's what's going to lead to the AUM.
Absolutely. No, that makes perfect sense. And I know that Simon and I, the way we tackle this is we call it a brand footprint, and it's basically quantifying your brand footprint. The beauty about going out and creating awareness via digital channels is everything's trackable. If somebody sees an explainer video from an ETF product issuer in a LinkedIn feed, or if they see something on their Instagram, or they see an ad beside the Wall Street Journal, even if they don't click on it, those things can be tracked. It's called a view through. And if they do click on it and go to your website and spend time, you're able to amplify your brand footprint in front of that one person by remarketing and really becoming an omni-channel presence in front of them. So digital is a fantastic way in terms of expressing your narrative. It's a fantastic option because it's so trackable. A lot of times if you were to purchase print or if you go to some more traditional methods, it's really tough to track direct impressions, when they happened, who they happened to, etc. And so, I know that Simon and I in-house, Alexandra, are really focused on defining your brand footprint omni-channel so that when you are investing in your exposure dollars, we're really able to give you back something. We're able to say, here's a number in the overall penetration of the psyche or mind share of the investors that you're going after. So that's really awesome. So, okay, next question is, on your website, you guys state the importance of clearly defining what wild success looks like when it comes to marketing. And you drop a couple of ideas here. So do you want to connect with a certain demographic or type of customer? Going up after institutional investors or investment advisors or the retail customer? Do you want to drive engagement through mobile? Do you want to increase brand awareness and obviously boost AUM? I think everyone would be agreed with the final one there. So in your experience, what do you guys find is the best marketing goalposts for a new ETF issuer to set their sights on, and why?
Yeah, so again, from a kind of a metrics and tracking standpoint, you want to come out of the gate super duper strong when you first launch your product. And again, going back to the KLT, you want everybody to know about that product. So I think the first one is, from an awareness standpoint, you want to look to things like an ad campaign or a PR campaign, which are trackable. So from a PR standpoint, are you seeing a spike in trading volume? That would be one goalpost. From an ad campaign or a social media campaign, a drip campaign on Twitter, are the metrics showing the engagement? Are the metrics showing more new followers or people coming to your website and clicking and downloading a fact sheet or downloading a white paper? If you are able to hit those metrics, and more importantly, I would say, is if you are able to share those metrics with your sales team, and if you have any sort of inbound marketing software that actually tracks those leads, that's a perfect opportunity for your sales guy to pick up the phone, call up a client and say, hey, I saw you download our fact sheet, want to check in, see if you have any questions. So it's important to get all the metrics down. And I know Traction House, that's something that you guys focus on, but I would say it's almost more important of what do you do with those metrics? How are you going to enable your sales team to optimize those metrics and leverage those metrics to get out in front of more people? So goalposts, just to recap the goalposts. So from a press coverage standpoint, are you seeing a spike in trading volume? Are you seeing a spike in engagement? From an ad campaign or an email blast or social media campaign standpoint, are you hitting the metrics that you've set out for yourself to determine, are we getting the awareness that we're looking for? And then, of course, at the end of the day, the holy grail of all of this is creation units and AUM. And over time, you'll be able to see this. You might not be able to know what exactly attributed to the AUM or to the creation unit. Was it a corner office meeting? Was it a webinar? Was it a conversation, at a steak restaurant? Was it a conversation that was had during a conference? But that just goes to show you that you can't just rely on one thing. The metrics are great, but it's a little bit of everything. It's having the digital ad campaign or having the social media campaign that you can track. It's making sure you have a robust sales team. It's making sure you're face-to-face with clients at conferences. It's making sure you're talking to the financial press. And you can track all of these things individually and at the end be able to come maybe without, not an exact number, but you can put together some sort of clout measurement to see how are you engaging with investors and is your message being heard.
So I think to wrap this up, what I'd like to do is I would love to get an idea from you of an ETF issuer that is doing it right. So what is some inspiration or what's an ETF issuer that you have in mind that is someone that's really knocking off a lot of these check boxes and they're really, doing the digital marketing game properly? Do you have anybody in mind?
Yeah. So actually there's this one issuer, and full disclosure, they are not a client. So I hope that goes to show how much I actually respect their work, because it's not even something that we did. I'm very much a fan of what they've done. So there's an ETF issuer out there called ARK Investment Management. They go by ARK Invest. And they have a whole series of really interesting products. But as a marketer, what I'm really interested in, what I'm really inspired by, is the way they position their content, is the way they take advantage of mobile, is the way they take advantage of social media. And I would really urge, any new ETF issuer out there that's looking for inspiration or looking for best practices to take a look at their site. I mean, their content is on point, their social media is on point. They, their ad copy, the text on their website, it's clear, it's concise, it's from a design standpoint, it stands out from what other people are doing. If you even take a little bit of a further look, if you go on their website, they have these inbound marketing forms. So they're capturing data, they're capturing client information, and that's huge. And as I was saying a little bit earlier about, what do you do with them? Like, it's great to have all these metrics, but then what do you do with them? This is a perfect example. You can track, who is coming from your website, but if you can capture those email addresses and have your sales team follow up with a phone call or an email, that's really how you're going to keep the momentum. That's really how you're going to keep the engagement. So I think ARK Invest does a great job on that.
No, this is huge. I'm actually on their website right now. And for those of you who are interested in checking out ARK Invest, it's ark-invest.com. I'm on their site right now. They've actually got a podcast going. They've got gated white papers, webinars, blogs. Yeah, you're right. These guys are heavily invested in developing a lot of thought leadership content. They've got explainer videos. I can already see just on their homepage 2 or 3 different play buttons already. So if I'm a lazy researcher, I don't really want to check them out too much. I just want to watch some videos. You can do that. So these guys would actually be a good example of having a breadth of content that goes at different depths and the different formats. So if I want to listen while I'm on the drive to work, or if I want to get in depth and really do some serious due diligence on their products, they've got white papers. If I just want to watch a webinar, that's cool too, or an explainer video. So they've got different levels of consumption offered up and tailored to different people's different consumption preferences. So I think that's really one good thing to note about adopting an collateral omni-channel approach. And Arro Communications with Alexandra and her team are people that can help you do that. Developing all that breadth of content is really going to establish in the minds of investors that you are a thought leader, you're investing heavily in the space, you're someone that can be trusted and leaned on. Alexandra's been so helpful in just articulating a lot of the challenges and the ETF marketing strategies and things like that a new issuer can think about. Her expertise is obviously pretty in depth. And Alex, just for those of you people that are listening that are either a new ETF launch or ETF issuer, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, they can go to our website. It's arrocom.com, ARROCOMM.com. And, click on the contact us, shoot us an email, take a look at our work, take a look at our clients. You'll get a much better sense of how we think about PR and marketing all coming together. Take a look at our case studies, and we'd love to engage with you.
Alex, I really appreciate you being on the call today. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Chad.
You've been listening to the Traction House Investment Marketing Podcast, designed to help investment advisors and marketing practitioners leverage content marketing to rise above the noise in today's crowded, fragmented attention economy, capture investor mindshare, and ultimately grow their AUM. We hope you found today's conversation insightful. Stay tuned for more.